y to the third power times x to the fourth power y to the third power, and get a negative 2x to the sixth power y to the sixth power. Then I multiply negative 2x squared y to the third power times a positive 3x squared y. And I get a negative 6x to the fourth power y to the fourth power. Then I multiply negative 2x squared y to the third power times a negative 3x, and I get a positive 6x to the third power y to the third power.
Gaddafi, stand up, spell thaumaturgist.
Thaumaturgist.
Okay, and what does that mean?
A person who performs magic, a magician.
Okay. Brittany, spell miracle.
Myrmecophagous.
Okay, what does that mean?
Feeding on ants.
Very good. Spell prophylactic.
Prophylactic.
Okay, what does that mean?
The act of to defend. To defend or prevent something, especially disease.
Okay.
It's prophylactic medicine.
Good evening and welcome to For the People. When the African-American child enters the educational system of this country, it is as if he or she was approaching a desolate desert littered with landmines called educably mentally retarded, at risk, learning disabled, in need of remediation, tracking, and IQ test. Since 1975, the Marcus Garvey School in Los Angeles, California, has been guiding African-American children around these educational landmines. Many educators believe that the African-centered curriculum used by Marcus Garvey School is the key to the success the school has had in educating African-American children. With us are the founder of Marcus Garvey School, Dr. Anyam Palmer, and Ms. Rebecca Henry, a teacher at the school. Dr. Palmer, I guess the first thing we want to know is why and how did you start Marcus Garvey?
Okay, first let me just say a word about Rock when he came. The brother had tears running down his cheeks. They kept coming up to the office getting these little towels, you know. I said, what are you guys? Say, Rock's down there crying like a little baby, you know. See? And incidentally, I wish you could have heard what he was telling the children earlier. Rock told them that he went from jail to Yale. And everything the brother said here, it's completely accurate because it expresses the life of Rock more than Rock expressed it himself. He told them how that when he went to jail, he was totally illiterate. He said, I could not even read. He said, I was in the 12th grade. He said, I could not even read. I'm in the 12th grade. So he went, as he told the children, from jail to Yale. While he was in prison, a counselor helped him, and this counselor got him started in acting. And he was motivated. And in no time at all, he was reading on a 3rd grade level, then a 5th grade level, then an 8th grade level, and then a college level. And he started taking courses, and he did so well that he got a full scholarship to Yale University. Now, if they could not educate him in the schools, as they said they couldn't, because they say they can't educate any of our children. If they can't educate him in the schools, how could they have done so well at Yale? It's a matter of motivation. And they have no intention of ever educating our children. Just think, if Rock hadn't gone to jail, in his own words, he said he'd have been dead now. He said he'd been on the streets pushing dope. What happened is that he had several brushes with the law. Now, these are in his own words, you see. It's right on the tape. And he got into a knife scrape with the guy. So the guy died and Rock lived. And that's how he went to prison. But had he not gone to prison, he certainly would have been dead by now. So in some cases, the prison elevates some of our young men. And then the problem is, how are you going to tell me that they can't educate our children in the schools if they can educate them in the jails? Okay, now, back to your question, brother. Marcus Garvey was started as a response to the failure of the miseducation our children are getting in the public schools, not only in California, but all across the United States. For a number of years, I was a teacher administrator, then college professor, and I found that wherever I went, that black children were being tremendously shortchanged. I left the primary grades because I felt that if I could get to them at the later grades, I could do more, but I found that I couldn't. And I went from one assignment to the other thinking that I could always do better, but it was always worse. And then it occurred to me one day that certainly our people were not brought here to be educated, we were brought here to be enslaved. And we were not brought here to go to college, we were brought here to pick cotton. And they didn't bring us here, I want you to know, to do for us. They brought us here to do us in. And the schools are the primary agents of what is happening to our young people. When our young people graduate from these high schools, they can't even read. As was the case with Rock, I have a high school diploma. So it occurred to me, brother, years ago, that if our children were ever going to be educated, we would have to do it. It would have to come by us because, after all, why should another ethnic group be interested in making our children the competitors of their children? Think about that for a moment. Why should they want your child to successfully compete with their child? There's such a thing as self-preservation. There's such a thing as a profound self-interest. And they are expressing this self-interest by failing our children in the schools.
What kind of obstacles did you run into when you setting the school up?
Oh, there were a great number, and we are running into them right now in 1994. As a matter of fact, we have had 3 official orders to close our school. They gave us dates and times and everything, you know.
To close?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, I can show this to you. I have it in writing, you know, that they even put out a warrant against me, you see, for my arrest because I refused to close the school, you see.
Okay, cool.
They said that we were violating various standards, various ordinances. Well, the ordinance that we were violating was teaching young people to read, write, and do arithmetic. That's what we were violating, brother.
What does the curriculum at Marcus Garvey look like?
Well, it depends. See, our curriculum is multifaceted because, okay, now, those young people you saw doing all that spelling, they were second graders. Linda Sanders was the teacher. They're reading at a college level. As a matter of fact, the textbook the second graders have been using for a number of years is Stolen Legacy. And Stolen Legacy is a book that I use in college for my students, and my college students complained. But these children eat it up. They say, this is so easy, because when they learned that it was their ancestors who gave reading, and not only reading to the world, but writing as well, and math in addition to that, they say, this is so very easy. We're going to be like our ancestors, Brother Anya. And that's the way that we motivate them. So naturally, the curriculum for the second graders who are coming from the various schools monitored by the Board of Miseducation, they're not going to be doing the same thing that our second graders are doing.
Monitored by the Board of what?
Miseducation. I'm sorry. That's a Freudian slip. By the Board of Education, you see. Okay. Now, see, so we find out where the child is, and then we start building them. And we do it by first working on, you know, on their, well, we work on their cognitive and affective. But possibly, the sister can tell you how she motivates her children once they come. And when they come to her, I think she'll tell you that they're in pretty bad shape, brother.
Okay.
Very bad shape.
Yes, it is a different situation at the junior high. I teach at the junior high level, 7th and 8th and 9th. And at the junior high, you have 2 different populations of students. You have the students who are coming from the elementary school who matriculated through that system, who are very advanced and accustomed to being in a disciplined environment. And then you have students who are coming from the public schools who are either failing in the public schools and the parents decide that they're going to send them to Marcus Garvey, or who have been discipline problems in the public schools. And their parents are putting them in Marcus Garvey so they can continue with their education. So we're getting the students at various levels of not only academic ability, but also consciousness and knowledge of themselves. But my approach with all of the students that I have in my classes, and I teach world history, world geography, and 9th grade biology, is coming from an Afrocentric perspective, and it reinforces it for the students who have already been exposed to that, and it also is new information for some of the students who are coming from the public schools and who have only been taught that they were brought here as slaves and they're of no benefit to the society, and basically that their whole motivation is to go out there and make money to get a job. Yeah. So we try to counteract that.
Well, this is a technical question, but how do you weave that African history in the studies, in the curriculum? How do you...
Specifically, how do I weave it in? Okay, I can give you an example. Right now in my history class, we're studying various different less industrialized countries. For example, we're studying India in one class and Australia in another class. And my focus in studying those countries has been on colonization and genocide. So instead of just focusing on what's in the book material, I have to edit it as we go. And I want the students to understand the impact of what colonization has done to these people in these countries, and also how that has affected not only continental Africans, but also African people in the diaspora. And when I talk about the indigenous people in any countries, we always talk about genocide and the genocidal effects of colonization. So that's how I approach my material. Anytime I'm presenting anything in any of my classes, we always talk about the direct and the indirect impacts of whatever we're discussing on African people. I always tell my students, you have to analyze things critically. Whatever you're reading, you have to analyze. You have to look to see who wrote the book and who was the book written for, who was the audience, and why is this material being presented to you in this manner. You have to analyze everything critically, and that's really how I weave in an Afrocentric perspective in my classes. And it's beneficial to the students because the students come away with a feeling of a sense of self-worth, that they were somebody, that they are somebody, and that they will continue to be somebody. And it does make a difference in their interest in the classwork.
How would, Dr. Palmer, how would you describe the socioeconomic backgrounds of most of your children?
Okay, they come from all levels. We have people who are neurosurgeons with children there. As a matter of fact, before I boarded the plane, I had a visit with one of our parents who's a doctor, and then we have about 20% of the people who are welfare recipients, you see. So they go from the bottom to the top. I recall when we first started, about 20 years ago, that all of the students came from parents, so-called disadvantaged homes. They would come on bicycles and little Volkswagens, but now they come in Rolls Royces. We have about 5 Rolls Royces there. Sometimes they come in chauffeured limousines, you see. So we have a variety of...
have you noticed any difference between the children from low-income homes and those that come from Rolls Royce homes?
Okay, now...
She's saying,
Go ahead and
let me
tell you things.
Yes, I notice it, and I've discussed it frequently, because what I've noticed with a lot of the students who come from the more advantaged homes as far as economically, money-wise, they tend to have more behavioral problems, and they tend to, their attitude is a little different. I find that a lot of the students who come with not as much money available at home, it seems to me that some of their parents are more involved with what they're doing. That's not across the board, but I have noticed some of those differences, and I think the effect of it is just a societal effect of often when you have money, sometimes you're not as home as much with your children, and seeing to their schoolwork and seeing that they succeed in that sort of way. Money becomes to be a babysitter. You supply the kid with a lot of material objects, and so we even see that among our children also. With the money just impacts the children.
Dr. Palmer, you were about to say?
Yeah, what the sister hadn't told you is that she's a licensed attorney also. She is licensed to practice law in California, but she would prefer teaching at Garvey School, which is, I think, a tremendous testament to her concern and will. I recall when I was teaching that when I would teach Shakespeare, I was in the public schools. I never had a chance to teach at a school like Garvey. That when I would teach about Shakespeare, I would also have a lesson about Terence. And I would document conclusively that had there not been Terence, who was an African, that there would have been no Shakespeare. Because what our children are not told in the schools is that Shakespeare plagiarized his entire body of literature with most of his themes, with practically all of his poems, from Terence, who was an African. And not only did Shakespeare do it, but also Molière and that entire school of thought. And when they learned that it was an African named Terence from whom Shakespeare plagiarized, then they became very willing and very eager to learn the various forms of English. And when I would teach them his story, at Garvey, we call it his story, and a couple of weeks ago, one of the students, he said, "Brother Onion," he said, "why do we call it his story?" I said, "Well, brother, because that's what it is." He said, "Well, if that's what it is," he said, "well, why don't we call it Hisley?" I said, "What do you mean Hisley?" "His lie." I said, this is a fifth grade student. I said, I had never thought about that as long as I've been here, So I think now we're going to start saying Hisley, you see. Okay, also, when I was teaching history, and when I would be teaching them about the European side of history, we would always come across Alexander the Great. He was a great warrior, a great politician, and a great robber and thief as well. But along with Alexander the Great, I would teach them about Cletus. And Cletus had another name. He was called Cletus the Black. Had there not been Cletus, there would have not been Alexander the Great. Because in Alexander's campaign at Persia, I won't go into all the details, but there was a Persian poised to bring his mace down on Alexander. And what happened is, Cletus saw this, and he ran up behind the Persian, and he hit him with such a hard blow, a sharp blow, that his arm, the sword, and everything came off, you see. And so he saved Alexander's life at the Battle of Persia. But you always see Alexander depicted as Alexander the Great, and you never hear anything about Cletus. So when the children would ask me, "Well, Brother Onion, why didn't they tell us about Cletus?" I would tell them, well, yes, they were going to tell you. They had every intention of telling you because they knew that it would have been morally correct to tell you. You would have felt better about yourself had you known the great things that your people have done in history. They said, "Well, why didn't they tell us?" I said, "Well, just as they were getting ready to tell you, the printing press broke down. So even in spite of their good intentions, they couldn't tell you, you see. So I say now, even though we don't have a printing press, we're going to make one in this classroom, you see. So when I was teaching, I taught everything from an Afrocentric perspective.
How does the African-centered perspective and curriculum differ from the Booker T. Washington, George Washington, Carver menu that even people as old as I am got in school? How does that differ conceptually?
See, we don't put George Washington, Carver, and Booker T. Washington down at all. We teach that George Washington Carver in particular was a great scientist. But see, this man was so obsessed with his creations that, well, that was his total obsession, his total life. And incidentally, he died broke, too. As fast as he would bring these creations out, they would be absorbed, you see. And all this thing, peanut butter, all that came from him. But he never received any of the benefits from it, you see. So we just teach them that there are many, many, many other heroes. And we have a constant venue of heroes, of black heroes and heroines that we parade before the brothers and sisters at Marcus Garvey School. And see, we tell them that had you been in the public school, the only two blacks you'd have heard about would have been Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. But we want you to know that you have heroes not by the ones, twos, threes, but by the thousands, you see.
Yeah.
And it is not in the interest of public education to have our young children walking around here with pride in themselves, or walking around here doing calculus in the 5th grade as you saw back there. How then are you going to convince them that their ancestors were nothing but slaves and that they should hate themselves? And if you hate yourself, you hate anyone who looks like you.
Okay.
Well, a big difference between the philosophies that George Washington Carver and Booker T. Washington had in an Afrocentric approach is it didn't emphasize knowledge of yourself.
Yeah. No, I guess what I was asking was, even when I was coming up, we got a little bit of George Washington and Booker T. Washington. All right, but now we have the African-centered curriculum, where I guess African people are viewed as a central part of humanity, as opposed to a footnote. That's what I was. That's what I was trying to allude to.
Yeah, because their approaches emphasize a practical application of skills, but without the knowledge of who invented the skills and that it was our people that invented them. And I think it does make a difference when you're applying your skills and the knowledge that you obtained to know that it was you and your people that invented those skills, so that you're just basically replicating history.
When the child comes to your classroom, what message, verbal and nonverbal, do you want to send to that child?
Oh, I tell my children all the time, the main point that I want to send to my child is that just as we as African people have done in the past, we can do again. And that's what we're here to learn about. We're here to learn about our past achievements, our present achievements, so that we can continue achieving.
I saw in one article in the paper that you said one of the main things you want to find out is from your teacher is, do you love black children? Could you address that, please?
Yeah, well, actually, what I would really like to find out, true. First is, how do they feel about themselves? Because, see, if you don't love yourself first, well, then it's difficult for you to love someone who looks like you, and black children look like them. So the first thing that I look for is love of self, and if there's a love of self, then there's also a love of kind. Because unfortunately, there are a number of teachers of African-American ancestry in the public schools working for Board of Miseducation, but some of them, unfortunately, now not all of them, but when I was an administrator in the public schools, I found that a few of these teachers held our children in as much contempt and hated them as badly as some of the other teachers did, you see. So we always look for how they feel about themselves, And one thing that I try and find out is if they have belonged to any community organizations, do they attend the various conferences and lectures around town, you see. But it's difficult now because they have so many traps for our young people now. It's difficult now to find people who are truly Afrocentric. But we have our own training program, and we try and bring them along as best as we can. And what I neglected to mention then, I did the same thing with the students in my class. Sometime a little later, they would ask me, well, Brother Onion, what happened to Cletus? That's one who saved Alexander's life. And I said, well, yes. Now, wouldn't you imagine that he was rewarded by making him one of his trusted aides, or a governor of one of his provinces, or maybe the captain of his cavalry? And they said, well, yes. Which one did he get? I said, well, what happened to Cletus? He saved Alexander's life, right? Yeah, he did. So what happened to him? I said, well, Alexander murdered him. You see? And so they say, oh. So then I say, now, when you think about it, you're going to see that there's a lesson in this for you. You see, so you think about it too, and you'll see the lesson. It's obvious. And Cletus was unarmed when Alexander murdered him.
Let me get back to another question, and that is, how do you assess where your children are academically, where the students are?
Me, it's through the classwork that I give them. Through the tests I give them, I emphasize writing. Even though I don't have an English class and a literature class, I still emphasize the same basic skills in my world history and geography and biology classes. So it's through the coursework, it's through my interactions with them, it's through their speaking skills, their writing skills, just their general skill level that I'm able to assess where they're at and tailor things for them. I don't have all of the students in all my classes doing the same things because they're at different levels.
Okay.
They're at different levels, and so I'm trying to tailor my curriculum to meet the needs of all the students.
So does Marcus Garvey use any standardized test and so-called standardized?
We do the RAT, and we do the wide range achievement test, and there's one other that we do. We haven't done it now for a couple of years because, see, on the RAT, our third graders, now these are the ones who've been there for a while now, they would score college reading and 11th grade, sometimes 12th grade arithmetic. And on this other test, I think it was the Stanford Binet test, it would be about the same thing. Now, these are the old students. The new students can even pronounce the words often on these tests, so we didn't bother with the new students because we knew exactly where they were. Now, a lot of people, brother, think that this is something new that is happening to us, you know, about the failure of our children in the schools. There's an article here, June the 6th, 1972. The title of it is Minimum Reading Levels for LA Schools Ordered by the Board. See, the Board of Miseducation ordered the superintendent to establish minimum reading levels for the children, black children in particular, because obviously had European children been failing in this nature, there would have been a mass upheaval, you see, of European parents, European people, so they would never accept that. Now, what they said was that, I'm going to read this, it said, the commission proposed a goal that no school will have an average reading score below the 25th percentile, you see. Now, George Anna Hardy, another member, agreed that the board should make it clear that it will not accept attitudes on the part of teachers which produce low achievement among pupils. The reason our children do so poorly is not because of our children, it's because of them. See, it's not a case of we're the problem, they're the problem, you see. Now, here's the way they scored a couple years later. Now, remember his sacred promise. Okay, Palos Verdes, grade 2, they scored 96 in reading. San Marino scored 94 in reading. Beverly Hills scored 91 in reading. Inglewood, grade 2, 10 in reading. Pomona Unified, grade 2, 23 in reading. Compton Unified, grade 2, 4 in reading. Compton was all black. Now, this is criminal. What do you think would happen if there was a factory that was continually producing defective goods, that was continually operating at a tremendous loss, that was continually producing products that could not be marketed, that was continually producing products that were coming out as second, thirds, or unusable? What do you think would happen to that factory? The factory, of course, would close. They would lose all of their clients. No one would buy their products. But see, because the children in the schools who are failing, who have a reading score of 1, who have a reading score of 10, as opposed to the reading scores of the European children of 90 and 91, they are black children. So they say, keep the factory open. We dare not close it, because this is a tremendous weapon that we can use against this community. And what you heard there, if you really understood the consequences of it, it would have tears running down your cheeks. Because these young people who are scoring 10 in reading will one day have to compete against young people from the other communities who are scoring 90 in reading. And then when the young person fails, as you know that he would have to fail, they're going to tell him to pull him or herself up by their bootstraps. They don't even have any boots. So if they don't have any boots, where are they going to get a strap? So I'm just trying to show you how loaded the dice are against our children, and they don't know any better. See, the children actually in these schools, they think that they are the problem. They think that they are stupid. They think that they are dumb. They think that they are uneducable, you see. And there is a book that I used to use a lot when I was teaching. It's called A Story of Civilization. I've forgotten the author who wrote it. But I would take this book and I would show them where that in our ancient civilizations, we had great empires. We had the same number system that we have now. We have the same calendar that we have now. Our people gave calculus to the world. Our people gave not only calculus, but all math to the world. The things you take for granted now, 1, 2, 3, 4, that came from us. When we met the Europeans, they were using 1I1, 2I2, 3I3, IV4. Try fractionalizing those Roman numerals. Try adding them, subtracting them, reducing them to decimals. You can't. But now we cannot even use the product that our own ancestors invented, you see. So obviously it is not us, it is them, you see. And they are going to continue to do this because, I hate to be redundant, but why would they have any interest in making their people the competitors of their sons? Or rather, our children, the competitors of their sons and daughters. They aren't going to do this, and you can't blame them, in a sense.
Okay, as we call for questions from the audience, let me ask you about what you think the impact of desegregation has been on the educational process for black children.
Well, that's, okay, I'll use myself as an example. I went to I.M. Terrell High School in Fort Worth, Texas. It was a strictly segregated school. And all of the young people in my community, the brothers particularly, Fred Smith, Richard Bennett, Dewitt Setchell, and Atro Platt, we weren't poor. We didn't even know how to say poor. We didn't even know what that meant. We were poor. See, there's a difference between poor and poor. See, poor people made fun of us. But we had teachers who loved us. We had teachers who would crucify us if we would act up in school. They had the total backing of our parents. We had teachers who would threaten to knock us down in class if we acted a fool, and they would, and then they would take us home to our parents. Now, even though none of us had fathers in the home in my community, all of us went to college. And all of us did well in college, with the possible exception of myself, because I could never match some of these students, some of these brothers that I just cited, you know. Now, my old high school is integrated all up. It's the biggest mess you've ever seen in your life. I had the pleasure of going down there about 10 years ago, and I'm telling you, I was in a state of shock for, I'm still in a state of shock. Teacher with his foot up on the desk, the children just running wild. He's reading the paper, you see. Children down in the restroom smoking weed. Other children out there on the yard smoking cigarettes. Nothing was happening in the classes. And I could just, oh my God, if something like that had been happening with the teachers that we had. Now, all of those teachers are gone. They fired them all, you see. And to me, that was the greatest disaster that could befall our people in the schools. Our people are now being taught, even in schools of the South that were strictly segregated, they're being taught now by people who don't even like them, by people who tell them to their face that they're dumb and stupid and that they will never amount to anything. And if a child keeps hearing that, not only will he begin to believe it, but he's going to act it. So to me, this thing about integration, it has done well for the European community, but it has wreaked havoc on our communities, you see.
Most black parents think that if their children can just learn the same thing the white child is learning, that their children will do just fine. What do you see as being the limitations of American education where the political, economic, and cultural needs of black people are concerned?
Okay, now, to begin with, what you're saying is absolutely correct. A great many black parents believe this. That's why they sent their parents to, they sent their children to the so-called integrated schools. Now, to begin with, number one, the odds are prohibitive against the child learning the same thing that the European child learns. Okay, but let's just say, for the sake of the discussion, this child does learn what the European child learns. Now, when he goes to the university, well, okay, let's say that he's out of the university and he's learning the same thing that, he has learned the same thing that the European child has learned. He has to go to his slave master for a job. He has to go to his slave master for approval. His slave master is going to be his supervisor. So until we start doing for ourselves, and until we start making opportunities available for our children within our community, it isn't going to make any difference what he learns in school, really. But it is highly unlikely that this parent who wants his child to learn the same thing that the European children learn, it isn't likely that's going to happen initially. But even if it does happen, the child is still going to be at a disadvantage in the larger community. There have been numerous studies, I'm not talking off the top of my head, there have been numerous studies to this effect, and they've found out that a high school graduate, if he's a European, he can expect to have an earning power higher than the average college graduate if he's black. So now that answers that question, I do believe, brother.
What do you think of the so-called multicultural movement that is in the school system?
Well, it's in the school system, it's true. But it's a joke, it's a travesty. And they make certain that the people who are teaching these multicultural courses teach it exactly the same way that they did before. See, they can destroy anything just by the person they get to handle it. Now, in some of these departments of Pan-African Studies and Black Studies, in which I love very much because they were doing a great job at one time, but they found that by putting teachers there, you know, who were black, who had the same attitudes that they had, they can kill the interest of students in black studies. Because you can get a person who looks like you to do the same thing that the European is doing. I call these people Afro-Saxons, you know. They don't know whether to throw a spear or, row a boat, you see. So they have killed a lot of programs like that. And the multicultural curriculum isn't doing anything for us. And my position, brother, is that no matter what they come up with, as long as they are coming up with it, it's going to be the same result. I don't see any solution except going back to the way the schools used to be. And we had some great schools in the South. Of course, in the North, the schools were always integrated.
Well, I ask you if is that realistic, but I told the audience here that we're going to get involved with this, and you're sitting there looking very comfortable. All right, I don't hear any questions coming up. Okay. I don't hear any comments, and I see one back there. Okay, let him.
Compared to education of some countries in the world, American education falls short in general. And I think we all understand that black education is even, Afro-American education is even worse. What I'm hearing and what I've seen is that you've done a marvelous job at the school. And what I'm hearing is that African oriented motivation helps tremendously. And I'm wondering whether or not, and not to make small of that, because that's a powerful tool, I understand that, but I'm wondering whether or not there are other things, other principles that you've discovered. Are there other things that you can share that could be shared with the world, with the country? Because you're right, even if we were to mimic the education of European descendants in this country, we'd still fall short on a world level. What can you share? Can you share, I won't call them secrets, can you share the things that you're doing above and beyond, or is it primarily a motivational tool?
So you can deal with that.
I think that a large factor in that is that we don't set limitations on our students. That's why you can have students in the second grade reading Stolen Legacy, reading at a college level, because we don't tell them they can't do it. We present material to our students, and it's presented to them as if they are capable of handling it and moving forward. So I think that's the main factor, is that we're not limiting them. And then behind that push is because it's coming from an African person. It's coming from somebody that looks like them and telling them that they can do it. And so not only is it an Afrocentric push, but it's also a push with no limitations. And I think that's the main motivation factor. Children will do what they want to do when you tell them that, unless you tell them that they can't do it. They don't have preconceived notions of they can't do it. The notion that they have in their mind is that they are capable. And that makes a big difference.
Follow-up, if I may.
Yeah.
How do you bottle this and sell it to the larger society? Because, the whole country, especially black people, but the whole country is in need of this education.
Okay. Well, okay, that's what I do a great deal of my time. As a matter of fact, we have helped about 10 cities start schools. Now, they're not Marcus Garvey schools because, as I tell them repeatedly, I don't want to do one of these hamburger things. Franchise. Yeah, no. I say it's your school. You'll feel better about it. You'll operate it with, a tender, loving care and hand. And that's the answer, brother. I mean, because I don't know if we can expect our slave master to have an interest in educating us. I really don't. I remember some years ago that everyone was talking about busing was the answer. I think all of you remember that, don't you? Busing? Okay. Now, it wasn't at all. It was just another smoke screen. It was just something to keep us quiet for a while. This article came out in the L.A. Times, June the 17th, 1990. It was titled, Minority Gains Limited in L.A. Busing Program. And here's what let me read the first paragraph. It says, more than 20 years after the Los Angeles district began its original busing program to integrate schools, the minority pupils in that program are doing no better than the students they leave behind in segregated schools. Mm-hmm. You hear what I said? Mm-hmm. No better. They were doing no better than the ones that were left behind. So when the black parents finally saw what was happening to their children, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, riding a bus 30, 40, and 50 miles to sit next to a European child, you see, all of this inconvenience, all of this travail, all of this extra expenses, they found that their children were doing absolutely no better. So then they jammed the superintendent of the schools, and I'm going to quote him about busing. They said, well, why isn't it working? Why is it our children are still doing so poorly? Now, here's what he said exactly. He said, busing was never meant to be an academic improvement program, contends school superintendent Leonard Britton. We said we would provide an integrated experience for the children, not necessarily an improved education. Think about that. Now, do you see all the games they run on us? And we were so gullible, you know, we'll just lap it up. If they put it out there, we'll lap it up, you know, see? And, you know, I think that's the worst thing, one of the worst things that ever happened to us. Not only in L.A., but they found in all of the cities where they had these extensive busing programs that it meant absolutely no difference in the academic achievement of the program. Because if you think that your child is going out there to this suburban community where they've never seen black children before, and get loved and get cared about and get educated, you're a little more naive than I thought, you see.
Well, does that get to the secret that the gentleman in the audience was referring to? When one of my children was going to school, Vivi Reed, it's called, in Columbia, South Carolina, I used to always like to see the teacher hugging my daughter. All right? And I know that meant a lot to her, and it meant a lot to me, but I used to always wonder, well, how is she going to make it when she goes to public school? All right? How would that affect her? A child who had been used to getting hugs in the morning from the teacher. Could you address that, please?
Oh, I do think it will affect the student when they're out of that environment, because our students know that we care about them. We care about them. I mean, even though we are strict with the discipline at our school, and you need to be that way to have a nurturing academic environment, our students know that we care about them, that they're our most precious jewels. I tell my children that all of the time, you know, especially when I'm disciplining them, that I have knowledge to impart to them as African children, and I think that
what kind of disciplinary actions are allowed at Marcus Garvey?
Oh, the entire range. See, sometimes, we never turn a child away. We never do that, but sometimes we can't keep them. Particularly after the 5th grade, it's very, very difficult. Now, see, the academic deficiencies, we can remedy that. That's just like taking candy from a baby. But sometimes they have attitudes that are so deeply embedded. Sometimes they come in, they'll tell you openly they don't even like black people, you see. And it's difficult to rearrange this.
They'll tell you that they don't like black people?
Yes. Oh, yes. Sure. Oh, yeah, just like I told you, you know, see. And I told her brother, I said, brother, look in the mirror, you know. And I don't want to look in no mirror. I said, well, what do you think you are, you know? I ain't black. And he was about like me, you see. So they do a job on our children, you know. And then they have been with people who don't even like them, who don't even care for them. And see, the school can do this. They can, you know, see, they can make our children hate themselves. If they hate themselves, they hate each other. I remember when I was administrator in one of the public schools, well, 2 things happened that will stay with me forever. I'll tell you about one of them. I was the bad guy because I was you know, creating an environment that would make it possible for teachers to teach, because they said if they just had the correct environment, they could teach. So I created this environment. They didn't do any more teaching than they did before. But there was one teacher that the students kept telling me about, and they said he would tell them not to learn because they couldn't. I didn't believe it at first, because they're usually, you know, cool with it. They're usually covert, not ever overt. But I kept hearing from so many students that I decided to call a guy in one day, you know, and I was very pleasant at first, you know, well, you know. So then I got to the nitty-gritty. I said, I understand that you, what is it, do you tell the students anything in your class to discourage them? Oh, he says, oh, yeah. You know, I thought I'd have to, you know, bring it out. He says, oh, yeah. He says, I just tell them they don't have to study in my science, you know. So I looked at him, you know. So I said, oh, you know, I said, why is this? He said, because they can't learn it. And he was just as animated and pleasant, you know. So I says, okay. I says, tell me why I can't learn your science, you know. Because obviously I had already learned it. I was his boss, you know. So he says, oh, no, not you. He says, I said, no. I said, the only difference now between me and them is I'm older than they are. Now tell me why I can't learn your science, you know. So he started, and I locked the door because I was really getting upset. So I said, you know, you could tell me why I can't learn your science. So he did, when he saw that I was really getting angry, and I was a lot bigger than he was, you know. So he said, the reason these kids can learn my science is because you people were bred for strength, and all of the intellectual factors are no longer present. He said, if I would try to teach these kids science, he said, it would be an insult to their nervous system, and they would have breakdowns, and I don't want that on my conscience. So he said, the very first day in class, I give them an A. He said, they play cards, they dance, they do what they want to do. And he says, they don't have any work, they're happy. I don't have any work to do, I'm happy. He said, why are you so unhappy? Just like that. I almost got into some serious trouble, you know. But I said, no, it's just not worth it. So I left that job, you know. I left that job.
Now, what you just said might sound anecdotal, but I was talking to Dr. Asa Hilliard a couple days ago. Okay. And he shared with me a paper that he just delivered, I think, in Louisiana. And they had some folks from Harvard, et cetera. But one of the things that he showed me in that paper was a survey done by, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but they surveyed psychologists. They surveyed psychologists, and a majority of them felt that genetics and environment explained the difference between the black-white IQ. A majority of them felt that the reason black children didn't score as high on the IQ test was because of genes, genetics, and environment. All right? And so here you have a group of people that are working with the school system, psychologists, who feel that black children, like you said in your case, black children can't cut the mustard when it comes to these courses. So it's not anecdotal. And so you have a comment about that?
Well, of course we know that's false.
Uh-huh.
But that just, you know, that just is not making biologically sense. That's biologically incorrect. And for those of you who don't know that, that is false. So, but what you're talking about, though, is the perception of the teachers affecting the outcome of the students. And it does have an effect. I mean, if your students don't feel, I mean, if your teachers do not feel that you're going to succeed, a lot of times as a student you won't. Because of the low expectations of
because these teachers, in many cases, are listening to the psychologists, to the same psychologists who feel that, all right, we have a question.
Yes, I would like to know the percentage of students that go on to college, and I would also like to know the rate of parental involvement within your school. Is it on a weekly, daily basis? What?
No. Okay, now, Unfortunately, I can't tell you the number of our students who go. We don't have a tracking system. We need one. We should have one, but we don't. I would say that 99% of our students go to college. You see, I come across them, all the time. See. Okay, I remember one little sister. I can't think of her name. Anyway, her mother called me over to. She said, "Look, my daughter's just finished her first year, and I want you to counsel her." So, no, her second year, because she doesn't want to go back to college. So I said, "Well, what's wrong?" She said, "She made a B." I said, "She made a B?" And she doesn't want to go. I said, "What she make a B?" Made a B in physics. So I said, "Sister, this is the real," because she made all A's the first semester, see, in college. Now, because she was a Marcus Garvey student and had made a B in college in physics, I said, "Sister, I might make a B in physics. I mean, I'm not going to counsel her about that." So she explained it to the daughter. The daughter went back. It was a school in the South, too, made all A's, and so she's graduated now, and she's working with her mother, you see. All of our students do very well. Some make all A's in high school, some make all A's in college. I could go on and on and on, giving you examples of this. We don't have a tracking program system, but we are going to try and get one in place. All the time, see. One little sister, I can't think of her name. Anyway, her mother called me over to, she said, "Look, my daughter's just finished her first year, and I want you to counsel her." So, no, her second year, because she doesn't want to go back to college. So I said, "Well, what's wrong?" She said, "She made a B." I said, "She made a B?" And she doesn't want to go. I said, "What she make a B?" And made a B in physics. So I said, "Sister, this is the real," because she made all A's the first semester, see, in college. Now, because she was a Marcus Garvey student and had made a B in college in physics, I said, "Sister, I might make a B in physics. I mean, I'm not going to counsel her about that." So she explained it to the daughter. The daughter went back. It was a school in the South, too, made all A's, and so she's graduated now, and she's working with her mother, you see. All of our students do very well. Some make all A's in high school, some make all A's in college. I could go on and on and on, giving you examples of this. We don't have a tracking program system, but we are going to try and get one in place for a number of reasons. But it's just not, okay, now, so far as the parents are concerned, when I was going to school in Fort Worth, Texas, my mother could not help me, neither could my father. My father was absolutely illiterate. But see, they knew that all they had to do was to bring me to school, and the teachers would do the rest. So at Marcus Garvey, we say that as long as the parents bring the child to school, and as long as the child's behavior is of such nature that he will be able to learn, we'll do the rest. We don't ask anything of the parents, you see. Now, in about 8 or 9 years ago, some second grade parents had a very, very legitimate grievance. I hadn't thought about it. So they brought me some homework in that their child had to do. And they say, "Onion, we can't help. We don't know how to do this work, you see." So that was legitimate. It was real legitimate. So I said, "Okay." I said, "Now, just forget it." I said, "So in the future, I'll communicate this to all the teachers that we will not ask the parents to make certain that the child's homework is correct. All we'll ask the parents to do is to make certain that the child does the homework, and we'll do the rest." So see, we don't expect anything of the parents. Just bring the child to school, you see.
That's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm speaking of parents being on site to see what's going on. And parents also learn when they are a part of the day-to-day operations.
Parents can come to school anytime they want to. They don't have to get my permission to sit in the class. They don't have to get the teacher's permission. They come to school anytime they want to.
But you have no organized kind of parent group.
No, we're pretty good at educating the kids, you know. But they can come to school whenever they like, you know. See?
Yeah, I've had parents come in my classes and sit in and watch their kids, and actually it works very well for the child, especially when they come unexpectedly.
Yeah.
So they can see their child in true form, and actually so that they can see what's happening in the class, and that's been very, very beneficial for me and the parents, because a lot of times the parents find out information that they didn't know themselves. And also, as to your question about the parents' involvement, our students are required to receive homework at least 4 times a week. It's optional on Friday if you want to assign it. They are required to bring home a sheet which has their homework assignments from every class, and it has to be signed by their parents, and they have to bring that back each day. So the parents are very involved in as far as seeing on a daily basis what is required in the classwork. And I know all of the teachers are very receptive to parent involvement as far as parents calling you at home and as far as you contacting the parent about the academics that the child is involved in.
Could this possibly be the difference? I guess he was talking about like so-called PTO. All right. In your situation, a private school, parents are, quote, paying. I mean, we all pay through taxes, but whatever. They're paying. So does that present make for a different attitude on the part of the parents? That, okay, I'm paying, so I ain't coming to no meeting Friday night or whatever. I'm paying you to do this job. Now go on and do it.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now, PTA, we don't have a PTA at Marcus Garvey. It's a public school concept. Whatever the public schools do, we don't do. Whatever they don't do, we do. Now, PTA stands for Parent-Teacher Association. Now, every parent at the school has the teacher's home number. Every teacher at the school should have the parent's home number, right, sister? The parent can call the teacher whenever she likes, Sunday, Monday, evening, or whenever, vice versa. So see, in the PTA setting that I participated in when I was in the Board of Mesh Education, you know, now, they met once a year, or maybe twice a year, you see. But here they can have a meeting every day. You follow me? They can come to the school and talk with the parent, or if they're more comfortable, they can talk to the parent, you know, at home, and vice versa. So, no, it's totally different at Marcus Garvey. See, not only do the parents have access to the teachers, but they also have access to me. My office door is going in and out all day long. You know, parents just walking in, you see. And,
you know, speaking of that, when I saw the tape that you sent me, I told you this earlier, when I saw the tape that he sent me, I'm looking at the tape, and I see this man at the door and this woman at the door outside, and I'm saying, okay, this guy is a plumber. Was a plumber at the school, all right? And it turned out to be the founder of the school because of the way he was dressed. And so Dr. Hill and I were talking about that the other day, and I said, you know, I like that style. I like that style because you said you were painting or something?
Yeah, when Asa Hilliard first. Yeah, when Asa came to the school the first time, I was on a ladder painting. I didn't know who he was. I was trying to finish, you know. I was just rolling that stuff on because I was kind of tired, you know. So he says, where's the owner here? And I said, I don't know. You know, he's not here, you know, see. So then when I think he told somebody to try to find me because he was Asa Hilliard, I said, oh, is he here? I said, hey, here I am, you know. He said, you the owner? I said, well, yeah. And I was telling the brother that about 2 months ago, I was down in the restroom, in the cafeteria, and I was, you know, doing my mop work, you see. So evidently this new parent, she was bringing someone, because see, when parents come there, they always like to bring their friends. And I was just busy, you know, see. So she told her friend, she says, oh, there he is, that's a little raggedy janitor there. I was telling you about, you know, talking about me, see. So when we have our first parent meeting, I'm going to introduce myself to you.
But you know, we're laughing about this, but it's a question of attitude. And it's a very important question because you can go to South Carolina State College, you can go to Howard University, and you would not find the president with a brush in his hand or trying to fix a heating system or whatever. Can you address the question of attitude on the part of black school administrators and even presidents of college, of black colleges?
Oh, brother, that's kind of difficult for me because, see, I really enjoy my job. I enjoy painting in those two huge buildings. I enjoy doing the floors. see, because I always like to kind of be an example, you know, for the young brothers. See, because we tell them that what's a black man supposed to do? He's supposed to work and support his family. He's supposed to always be busy at something. He's supposed to just work, you know, see. So then when the youngsters see me around there working all the time, they say, I want to be like Brother Onion. When I grow up, I'm going to work, you know, see. And we want them to have this kind of attitude, you see. And then again, okay, there's another side of the coin, because, see, sometimes people say, well, Onion, you should be a role model for the children. You should come to school, you know, in your suit and everything. Huh? But, see, I don't feel comfortable doing that. When I was with the Board of Miseducation, yeah, I wore a suit every day because I had to. It was part of the dress code, you see. But now, have you ever seen me in a suit, sister?
No, brother.
I don't think anybody has, you know. See, my pants are ragged, you know. I have rags flying all over me every place, you know. But see, I'm functional. By doing 2 and 3 jobs, I'm saving the school a lot of money. I'm all, you know, the little brothers, they say, well, Onion, I want to be like you when I grow up. I'm going to be a working man. I'm going to be a working black man, you see. So, brother, there are 2 sides to the coin. I mean, maybe some people feel more comfortable, you know, in this administrative mode, but I never refer to myself as an administrator. I just refer to myself when people call and they say, well, let me speak to the administrator. I say, we don't have one, you know, which we don't, you know. But I'm the janitor, the yard boy, the grocery shopper, the plumber, and all that stuff, you know. Yeah. And I enjoy every moment of it, you see. So, but then there's another side. There's a coin. See, some people might feel a little more comfortable, you know, being in this administrative role, but I really don't. And I love what I do, and I just can't wait to get to school every day, you know. So.
Yeah, but you seem to be the I wouldn't say the last of a certain breed, but how many Onion Palmers do you find across this country?
Well, I would hope to be a great many, because, see, we're helping people start schools in a lot of different places.
Well, let me ask you that specifically.
Okay.
For people watching who might say, okay, I want to get a school like this started, or maybe even support a school that's in the area that may not be, quote, African-centered, but is black-owned and operated. What would your advice to them be?
Well, okay, number one, let's take the second part first. If it's black-owned and it's not Afrocentric, it may as well be another public school. Because, see, even if it's a success, even if they teach the kids academics successfully, we have found that we can just motivate our students more, I mean a great deal more, by teaching them about themselves. Now, see, we've been around for 20 years now, and we have found that over the 20 years that when we teach our children about themselves, when they learn that their fathers and their forefathers were the first people on the planet Earth, when they learn that we had a great civilization when Europeans were in caves, when they learn that we're the fathers of all things, you know, math, science, and when they learn that, for instance, it just really excites the parents in that 2nd grade class, because their children come home to them telling them, Mother, there's no such thing as Greek philosophy, you know. Daddy, there's no such thing as Greek philosophy. Those Greek philosophers were nothing but a bunch of thieves, you know, because our ancestors discovered philosophy. That turns them on. And see, it also turns them on to other areas as well, because they say, our ancestors did this, we can do it too. And I don't think that a school is really doing black students a service in view of all the garbage that they see on the outside, if there isn't some place where they can come and get this remedied and get it adjusted. I mean, documenting now. I don't mean just, you know, off the top of their heads, but see, all of our things are documented. This sister is one of our new teachers, but boy, she's doing a tremendous job there. See, she documents things, you know, she brings it to them, and she doesn't say, you know, well, I think this or I believe this, you know, well, you know, here it is, see. And it really motivates our children. But see, it's primarily all about them, because in previous schools they have gone to, none of their teachers have looked like them. And there was an article in the Times about 5 years ago that predicted in California only 2% of teachers would be minority, only 2%. So as it is now, they go to school Their teacher doesn't look like them. They open their textbook, that nobody in the textbook looks like them. Then they go to church and they see this fellow up there who's supposed to be the king of the universe, and he doesn't look like them, you see. So I don't know. Our children just get short-circuited at just about every level. So we see our role, you know, as balancing this, you see.
Okay, we have a question here.
I applaud what you all are doing in your school. I think you all are doing a tremendous job. How many children do you have there?
About
and
500.
How many per class?
Okay, the class size always varies. It's a market thing. We never know what's, but I can guarantee you this. Parents always ask this question, and I tell them the same thing that I tell you, that it's a market thing. Now, if Brenda Spencer, who's our kindergarten teacher, if she had 5 children in her class, or if she had 100, at the end of the year, they still are going to be reading at anywhere from 10th to 12th grade level. I guarantee you that. The brother teaching the 4th grade class that you saw doing calculus, his name is Goings. Goings came to us from aerospace. He walked in the office one day and he said that, I've been hearing about the school for a number of years, and I've been wanting to come here, but he says, I just had to come, he says, because I want to work here, okay? So I said, okay, great, what do you do? He says, I work at aerospace. So I started laughing because it was funny to me. I said, brother, what do you do? He said, I work at aerospace. And I said, what do you do? He says, well, I'm an engineer. I said, brother, we couldn't pay you a fourth of what you make, you know? So I says, I tell you what, I says, if you're sincere, come back in 6 months. And if you come back in 6 months, I know you're serious and I'll give you a job. He came back in 4 months, so he's the guy doing the teaching. If Bob Goins had 500 children in his class, they still are going to be doing calculus in the 4th grade. The new school that we are building, and we're building a new school, the classrooms are going to be twice as large as the ones that we have now. The teachers are all trying to fight to get the larger classes, you see, because they feel that the more black children who are exposed to their infinite wisdom, our teachers kind of have these egos, you know, see, which is good. That's real good. The better off our race will be, you see. Now, a lot of our people believe that class size is the most important variable. I eschew this totally. From my point of view, it's the teacher. Because let's say that a teacher has 1 child, okay, in the class, okay? She has 1 child, right? The teacher doesn't enjoy teaching. The teacher doesn't like black children. And the teacher is never prepared. How much is that 1 child going to learn, do you think? Yeah, so that's my argument that, you know, class size is not the important variable. When I was teaching with the Board of Miseducation, I demanded large classes because I wanted as many of those brothers and sisters as I could get, you know, see, and they still remember me. So we never know what the class size is going to be. Just how many people come. We're trying to accommodate
But generally
them.
speaking, I mean, you have an idea what
the largest class we have is about 20, because see, our classrooms are small. But the new school, the classrooms are going to be twice as large, so we're going to have twice as many students.
And so how many students you think you'll be able to accommodate?
Some of them
with the new school.
We'll be able to have 40 students in the class,
And I mean total.
Oh, you mean?
Yeah, with the new school. Yeah,
we'll have about another 350 students, you know. So we'll have about 1,000 students once this new school is up, you know.
I still want to get back to the people in the audience watching this who are saying, okay, I'm fed up with this public school thing, and I think we can go on our own and set up a Marcus Garvey type school. What's the first thing that they need to do?
Well, the first thing they need to do is to make certain that they're serious, because it's a very rewarding project, but then it's, you know, it requires a lot.
It's work.
Yeah, but it's work that I find pleasurable, you know. I just love it, you know, see, and so do the teachers. So do the teachers. Matter of fact, Brenda, who's been there for 20 years, she said, Onion, I just enjoy coming here so much because, see, now we have a retirement program. And we're the only alternative school in the United States with a retirement program, to my knowledge. And I said, Brenda, you could, she said, Onion, I'm not going to retire until I'm about 90, you see, because she said she just loves coming to school there. She loves coming to work, you know, see. So the first thing they have to do is to make certain they want to do this. And if they're absolutely certain it's what they want to do, we'll be more than happy to help them We'll hold their hands from A until Z, you see.
Okay.
And this is what we need because, see, we're the only people on the planet that would expect our slave master to educate their children. I don't think you would, none of other people would expect that. You see, nobody but us.
But Dr. Palmer, you know, a lot of African Americans don't see white people today as their slave masters. That's the first thing.
Okay, well then I'll say our ex-slave master. You see. For the ones who don't, I consider him our slave master today. For the ones who don't, then our ex-slave master. You see. And I don't think that they have any interest in educating our children. I'll just be honest with you. And it has to be proven to me. And with the test scores that are coming out, how can you say then, okay, I was down to the San Diego Zoo. We took some of our children on a field trip down there about a month ago. And since I'm an old teacher, I always use anything like this as a teaching situation. They had whales who could respond on certain commands. They had dolphins and porpoises that they could train to do certain things on certain commands, you see. Very complicated maneuvers, you see. I mean, very complicated behavior. And then I said, now, am I to understand that they can train whales and porpoises and all kinds of mammals to do educational things, but then they say they can't educate black children? I said, now somebody's jiving, you know, see. If you can tell me that they can educate this whale, you know, but then they can't educate our children. So, okay, to people, to my brothers and sisters who would say, well, yes, they have an interest in educating our children, well, then I would merely say, well, why haven't they done it? That's, you know.
Okay. We have a question here.
But I want to applaud you as well. I saw your students in California at ASCAC convention. And
would you tell them what you saw, brother?
Well, we saw a two-year-old young lady who could go through the map and pronounce knew where every state was and pronounce the words.
It's a blank map. You point to the state, she'd tell you what it was.
2 years old. She could count to 100 by 5s, 10s.
And these are not, quote, geniuses in the Western sense, but just
African children.
African children.
Yeah.
All right.
But I cried when I saw this young fellow doing this advanced calculus, and I didn't know what the word he was talking about. But doing advanced calculus, and I think he was about in the in the 5th grade.
A lot of people were crying, brother. A lot of people were crying. They were,
But it was awesome to watch those children in terms of when the young brother got up and read The Stolen Legacy, and you know, I have problems trying to understand some of what's in The Stolen Legacy, and then told us what it was about. But with that, I came back to South Carolina. I work at a black college, and I'm looking at something altogether different. And I wonder, all our administrators, all these teachers, all these black folk who still believe that white folk are going to train our children, what do we say to these folk? I mean, I guess I walk around on a day-to-day basis. I'm looking at people, and it's just amazing to me. You know, I have good friends who are principals. I have my favorite term is that, and whenever I'm talking to them and other people, we march our kids to the slaughterhouse every day.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to me how, I guess because of their jobs, because they want to, and they are able to, on a day-to-day basis, continuously do this to our children.
And may not know anything else.
I don't know. See, brother, look, when they say that they're going to ask them, well, when are you going to start? Because, see, this crisis in education, so far as our community is concerned, it didn't just happen yesterday. I can document that it's been going on since they integrated these schools. I can document this, you see. So I would just suggest, brother, that you ask them, well, when are they going to start doing it? They're not ever going to start doing it. I guarantee you that. Each year's going to get worse. And you see, okay, the poorly educated child is a problem for us. These brothers and sisters in the prisons, if they would just find out what grade level they're reading, it would tell you a lot about why they're there. I think the average grade level in these penal institutions is about 2nd grade, 3 months, you see. And there is absolutely no reason for that.
Well, you say that. I had a legislator over recently, and he told me, in South Carolina and probably throughout the nation how they go about projecting how many beds they will need for prison. And he said that what they do is they go to the school system and they find out how many at-risk children there are, and based on that they project how many prisons they got to build, how many beds they got to have.
The projection is accurate too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's accurate. You heard what Rock said. When the man finished high school, well, he was in high school, went to prison, he couldn't even read his own name hardly. But he was educated in the prison. Now, if they can educate him in the prison, why couldn't they educate him in the school? So see, it wasn't Rock, it was a system. And the system is not going to change.
And let me give you another example. It's so good to have children. See, it's not like Oprah Winfrey. I have children and I'm married, so I can speak with some authority. I can speak with some authority. My son, very bright. In the early grades, I'm looking retrospectively now, they had him reading the Judy Blume and the whatever adventure stories and blah 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 blah. And I'm trying to slip in Jambo means hello, but I'm doing that, right? But what I noticed, and thank God it's been turned around now. What I noticed that in requiring him to read Judy Blume and whatever these other white writers, they developed in him a certain appetite, he wanted to read certain kinds of books, all right? The adventure stories, all right? And consequently, I had to make a concerted effort to get him to read anything really serious about our folks. Because in the school system, he was rewarded for reading all of this European stuff. Could you address that, please?
Okay, now this is great because most of them can't even read the European stuff. At least he was reading. Now at some point, since you're his daddy, you can always effect a transfer. Sometimes you can do it directly, sometimes you can do it indirectly, sometimes you can put little rewards in there, see to effect a transfer. But he's doing what most of our young people can't do, and that is read. 95% of our children in the schools are reading at least 4 grades below their grade level. I mean black children. As I said, they would never accept this if this were white children in this situation.
Time is running real short, but I want you to quickly respond to the question of credentialed teachers at your school.
Well, I can't. He wants me to respond to I can't respond to it. We've never had any. We have 42 teachers there, and I think 4 have finished college, And the first 8 or 9 years we were in existence, we never even had one teacher who graduated from college, you see. Because sometimes it's too difficult to get them away from that European education, you see.
That is the ideal, definitely. What you're doing is definitely something that we need to be moving toward. But right now in this country, about 90% or more of our students attend public school. And that's where they're going to be for a long time.